November 2007, Perugia, Italy. A 21-year-old British student, Meredith Kercher, was sexually assaulted and stabbed to death.
It's not ever going to be the same without Mez.
Could Meredith's own housemate, Amanda Knox, be one of those to blame for her brutal murder? Was it the result of a sex game that went terribly wrong?
E lì penso che abbiano perso un po' la testa.
But it's not an open and shut case.
The motive wasn't there. The evidence that Amanda was in the room wasn't there.
It will take 4 years and 3 sensational trials to reach a dramatic conclusion. And in the end, was justice done?
It was too much about Amanda and not enough about Meredith.
The city of Perugia lies in the beautiful Umbrian hills in the heart of Italy. It's famous for its historic buildings and its ancient university. For the parents of 21-year-old British student Meredith Kercher, it seemed the perfect place for their daughter to spend a year as part of her degree. Meredith embraces life in Italy.
Penso che la caratteristica principale di Meredith fosse proprio la voglia di vivere, la voglia di conoscere.
She quickly makes friends and in September 2007 decides to rent a cottage with 2 Italian students. The pretty former farmhouse is just a few minutes' walk from her university. 2 weeks later, Meredith and her housemates are joined by an American. Her name is Amanda Knox.
I think at the first they were bonded because of their language. Amanda also had worked her way to get to Perugia. She was quirky, free-spirited, from Seattle, which is a very alternative city.
To make her feel welcome, Meredith invites Amanda to join her and her friends when they go out.
They had a number of activities together, from visiting exhibition, going out at night, having a pizza together.
But soon the 2 girls realize how different they are, and friction develops.
As the weeks went on, they started to realize how culturally different they were, and tension had started to build in the house.
Sicuramente le amiche inglesi di Meredith hanno detto che c'era della tensione fra le 2 ragazze, che quindi non fossero così vicine fra di loro perché Amanda non era molto precisa nella gestione della casa.
Meredith complains to her friends and family about her habit of leaving the toilet unflushed. She is irritated by what she considers Amanda's exhibitionism, performing yoga at inappropriate moments and talking about her sex life. Above all, Meredith disapproves of the Americans' penchant for bringing men home to the cottage. Then, a month after her arrival in Perugia, Amanda meets a 23-year-old Italian computer science student, Raffaele Sollecito.
He was a smart and shy student from a very good family. He had not had many serious girlfriends. Amanda, I think, was one of his first, and they seemed very much in that early stage of being lovebirds.
Meredith and Amanda's friendship had cooled. On Wednesday, October the 31st, Meredith attends a Halloween party with friends. But according to Amanda, she texts Meredith that evening, suggesting they meet up.
They had an exchange of SMS with the mobiles. Where are you going? Which disco Halloween night are you going to go? I'm going to see you, XXX, I love you.
Meredith doesn't reply to Amanda's invitation. 24 hours later, she is brutally murdered. On the 2nd of November, Meredith's body is discovered by her housemate Filomena, her boyfriend, and Amanda and Raffaele.
She had several large knife wounds in her neck. The one very deep and fatal knife wound eventually resulted in her drowning in her own blood. Her bra had been cut off and her t-shirt had been rolled up and she was partially nude.
For the Kcamandaknox family, news that their daughter has been murdered is devastating.
Il loro sentimento fu veramente di tragedia e poi si è trasformato in un desiderio di capire, di conoscere soprattutto il motivo per cui è successo tutto questo.
For police in Perugia, the crime is unprecedented. There is intense pressure to solve the case as quickly as possible.
The window had been broken and things strewn around. It made investigators immediately think, perhaps this is a break-in and a sexual assault. But the more they investigated, the more they started to have doubts.
The police questioned Meredith's housemates about their whereabouts on the evening of the murder. All had stayed elsewhere that night and produced alibis. Kcamandaknox tells police she spent the previous night of the 1st of November with her boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, at his apartment, a short walk from the cottage. She says that between 10 and 11 the next morning, she had returned to the cottage and had noticed a couple of strange things. The front door was open, while Meredith's bedroom door was shut. She claims to have seen blood on the floor in the bathroom and on the sink taps. Yet she went ahead and had a shower. She says that later, at Raffaele's apartment, she'd casually mentioned what she'd seen. Together, they'd returned to the cottage, where they'd discovered glass from a broken window on a pile of clothes in housemate Filomena's room. Amanda called Filomena, who headed back to the cottage, and then the police. Filomena's boyfriend had broken down Meredith's door and discovered her body. But the following day, back at the crime scene, police become suspicious. They can't help but notice the couple's odd behavior.
They found Amanda and Raffaele kissing and cuddling, and that continued at the police station as they were waiting for the questioning. They were kissing and making faces and didn't seem to be grieving.
Police questioned Raffaele Sollecito and then Kcamandaknox throughout the night of the 5th and into the early hours of the 6th of November. They are particularly interested in Amanda's communications on the night of the murder with a Congolese man, Patrick Lumumba, the owner of a bar where she had been working part-time.
They'd seen text messages between her and Patrick Lumumba saying, "See you later."
For police, the texts raise suspicions further. Then, Amanda dramatically changes her story. Having already stated she wasn't in the house at the time of the murder, according to police, she now says she was. She even says she heard Meredith being attacked. And she names the assailant as Patrick Lumumba, though the circumstances of the statement are controversial.
At a certain point, and she claims it was after she'd been really intensely questioned and even cuffed on the back of the head, which police deny, she said, "It was him. I remember, it was him." The police officers describe her describing Lumumba, saying she had gone to the kitchen and put her hands on her ears like this to sort of block out Meredith's screams.
Police call in the prosecutor, and Amanda repeats her statement. By the next morning, police think they have a witness and a potential suspect.
About 9 a.m., she asked investigators for a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down the story again.
But in her written account, Amanda is less specific. She admits to having smoked marijuana with Raffaele the night of the murder and believes it's affected her memory. She again says she heard Meredith screaming, but her memory of seeing Patrick is hazy. On the basis of this evidence, Amanda Knox, Raffaele Sollecito, and the bar owner Patrick Lumumba are arrested and held in custody. But 2 weeks later, a witness comes forward who proves that Patrick Lumumba was in his bar at the time of the murder. What's more, DNA from Meredith's body and the crime scene doesn't match Lumumba's. Instead, the DNA is traced to Rudy Gede, a 20-year-old petty criminal, originally from the Ivory Coast.
They found his footprints, they had his palm print, they realized this was a guy they needed to talk to. They put out an Interpol alert for him and discovered that he had fled to Germany.
Authorities apprehend Gede and extradite him back to Italy. The police and prosecutor are left to question Amanda Knox's credibility, given she'd implicated an innocent man. They now believe that the evidence points to Sollecito, Knox, and Gede all being involved in the murder of Meredith Kircher. And they discover Gede and Knox know each other. They learn that both Amanda and Meredith had been introduced to him by some of their housemates.
They were not close friends, but they had had social encounters at a pub, at a party, at the downstairs flat.
Aveva incontrato Amanda Knox 2 o 3 volte, aveva espresso il suo gradimento per Amanda Knox.
The Italian prosecutor feels there is enough evidence to bring the three to trial. On the 20th of November, nearly 3 weeks after the murder, Rudy Gede admits to being in the house when Meredith was killed. He elects for a fast-track trial, and in October 2008 is tried in a closed court, attended by both Amanda and Raffaele. On the stand, Gede insists he didn't kill Meredith. Instead, he implicates an unidentified Italian man. But it's a story he will continue to change. On the basis of DNA linking him to the crime, Gede is found guilty of sexual assault and murder and sentenced to 30 years. Amanda and Raffaele had hoped his trial would exonerate them. But on the evidence put before them, the Italian courts have been convinced Gede acted with others. On January the 16th, 2009, after more than 14 months in jail, the pair are brought to trial in Perugia's historic courthouse. When the trial starts, the Kircher family joins the international press packed inside the vaulted Hall of Frescoes. During the trial, the Kircher family are called to testify on behalf of Meredith.
It was heartbreaking to hear Arlene Kircher on the stand, and John Kircher. Arlene talking about how you never expect when you send a child off to school that they'll never come home. The Kircher family was very dignified.
Amanda's demeanor, on the other hand, seems inappropriate.
She was very open and gregarious. She was smiling and laughing. She wore these t-shirts that said, "All you need is love," and it wasn't working in her favor.
Amanda has become a figure of obsession for the press. They've dubbed her Foxy Noxy, which was actually a nickname from her childhood soccer playing days, and cast her as a femme fatale. Now it's her testimony that falls under scrutiny. The verbal statement she made to the police, that she'd been at the house on the fateful night, are deemed inadmissible in court because there wasn't an attorney present. It's also revealed that the interviews weren't taped.
Arriving in the police office, I didn't expect to be interrogated at all.
Her written statement, in which she refers to her confused and hazy recollection of events, is admitted. On the stand, Amanda now reverts to her original story, that she had been at Raffaele's all night, and together they discovered a break-in the next day. But the prosecution disputes this account, claiming they can prove the pair were involved in Meredith's murder. They tell the court what they think happened on the night of the 1st of November. Meredith Kercher shared a pizza at a friend's house before leaving for home just before 9 p.m.
Noi sappiamo che Meredith torna a casa sostanzialmente per andare a letto presto.
The prosecution then claimed that shortly after Meredith returned to the cottage, Amanda and Raffaele bumped into Rudy Guede nearby.
L'incontro possa essere stato anche assolutamente casuale.
It's suggested that Amanda let both men into the cottage.
Le carte processuali dicono che ci fu sicuramente un ingresso agevolato perché non ci sono segnali di effrazione sulla porta.
The prosecution then argue that Amanda, Raffaele, and Guede, high on drugs, found Meredith in her bedroom.
Ci sia stato un approccio sessuale, ma probabilmente anche non violento inizialmente da parte di Rudy Guede, da solo o con gli altri.
They say that next, the three tried to involve Meredith in a sexual game, which she rejected. And the prosecution alleges that injuries found on Meredith's body suggest events then took an even more sinister turn.
Perché ci sono tantissime lesioni, piccole lesioni da minaccia, e probabilmente da lì poi è nata una colluttazione. E lì penso che veramente Rudy Guede, con gli altri come io ritengo, abbiano perso un po' la testa, hanno deciso di andare avanti e di ammazzare Meredith.
The prosecution points to discrepancies in Amanda and Raffaele's alibis. They say the break-in had been fabricated and call a witness who claims to have seen Amanda and Raffaele near the cottage that night. Most importantly, they present evidence that places the pair at the crime scene with Guede. They say a knife found in Raffaele's kitchen has Amanda's DNA on the handle and Meredith's DNA on the blade. Raffaele's DNA also shows up on a clasp found at the cottage, cut from Meredith's bra. To the jury, the evidence appears overwhelming.
Per quanto riguarda Kcamandaknox.
On the 4th of December 2009, after an epic 11-month trial, Kcamandaknox and Raffaele Solicito are found guilty of the murder of Meredith Kercher. Amanda is sentenced to 26 years in prison and Raffaele to 25.
Ketch hanno pensato che la verità era stata raggiunta, la giustizia è conseguente alla verità. Ovviamente, secondo la Corte in primo grado, questa era la verità.
But for Raffaele and Amanda's families, the verdict is a shock.
Certainly for the Knoxes, they were going to fight on. It was just beginning.
Back in the United States, public sentiment rallies behind Amanda, believing she is a victim of Italian injustice.
The family hired a U.S. attorney to aid the Italian defense attorneys. They also ramped up the media campaign to try to push and lobby for her innocence, that she was wrongly convicted.
How she is being portrayed and what she does is literally 180 degrees different than who we know our daughter to be.
The defense teams are convinced that Rudy Gede was solely responsible for Meredith's death. And they are skeptical of the DNA evidence that places Amanda and Raffaele at the scene. They say forensic tests were inconclusive and contamination may have occurred during analysis. After nearly a year of lobbying, the Italian authorities grant an appeal. In November 2010, proceedings begin as Amanda and Raffaele seek to overturn their convictions. The press is once again eager to see Amanda Knox, now 23. Her appearance and attitude are totally different.
She was wearing very conservative clothing. She kept her head down. She only spoke and looked around when requested to by the judge. So it was a very different demeanor.
An independent team appointed by the court to review the forensic evidence are called to testify. Their findings are devastating to the prosecution.
So the motive wasn't there. The evidence that Amanda was in the room wasn't there.
They claim that Amanda's DNA could have easily been left on the knife handle while cooking at Raffaele's apartment. And genetic material on the blade, allegedly belonging to Meredith, is too small a quantity to retest. The only DNA linking Raffaele to the crime scene, found on Meredith's bra clasp, is also called into question. It is revealed that the clasp had been collected nearly 7 weeks after the rest of the evidence. Video footage from the crime scene shows the clasp had moved from its original location on the floor. It's also shown being repeatedly handled.
They came to the conclusion that the results were not reliable. Also, the risk of a contamination was very high.
The possibility of forensic errors redirects the focus from the circumstantial evidence which proved so important in the pair's first trial.
They were just looking at the smoking gun. What is the forensic evidence, and does it stand up?
The defense counsel also raises doubts about the prosecution's theory of how Meredith was murdered.
It just didn't seem credible, this sex game gone wrong, the lack of motive, and perhaps questions about whether or not they really had the murder weapon.
In fluent Italian, Amanda makes a final emotional plea to the court.
Sto pagando con la mia vita per cose che non ho commesso.
On the night of the 3rd of October 2011, after nearly 11 months in court, an international audience tunes in for one of the most hotly anticipated verdicts in criminal history. Meredith Kercher's family, who'd had to endure again the horrific details of their daughter's murder, waits in the packed courtroom.
Ordina l'immediata liberazione di Knox, Amanda, Marie e sollecito Raffaele se non detenuti per altra causa.
Amanda and Raffaele are acquitted.
Meredith's mother, Arlene, sister Stephanie, and brother Lyle were all in the courtroom when the verdict was read. And there was silence. They were still, just the sense of sort of, how could this have happened?
After nearly 4 years in prison, Raffaele Sollecito and Amanda Knox are trying to resume normal lives. Rudy Gede, whose sentence was reduced to 16 years on appeal in 2009, remains the only person still serving time for the murder of Meredith Kcamandaknox. Continuing to deny that he acted alone, Gede has on occasion implicated both Amanda and Raffaele in recent years, but his accounts of what happened are vague and inconsistent. But with the prosecutor and the Kcamandaknox family's legal team convinced that the full story is yet to be told, their fight for justice continues.
Really, for us, it feels very much almost like back to square one.
If it wasn't Amanda and Raffaele, well then, who was it?
Under Italian law, the Kcamandaknox's last chance to find out exactly what happened to Meredith is to take their case to the country's highest judicial level.
Abbiamo molta fiducia nella Corte di Cassazione a Roma per l'ultimo grado di questo processo, perché riteniamo che possa dire ancora qualcosa di importante in questo processo.